Where are your glasses? How are you gonna take notes? You know your glasses, Mike.
John, are you gonna ask the same questions of both?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then maybe I'll defer to you, because.
Well, we'll rotate back and forth.
That's fine.
So.
Whatever you want.
We'll start in a second. Mike lost his glasses in the last few minutes.
Oh.
First place I looked was on top of his head, and they
It'd be
weren't
hard for him to
there.
look for him without his glasses. Oh.
He's got it.
We good?
He's got it.
All right.
Found it in his pocket.
Yeah, the keys on.
Didn't find all his money.
You're never gonna find it if it makes you a little money.
Kevin, or is the AV all set up?
We're recording. It's rolling already. Go ahead.
Well, gentlemen, I had introduced myself off camera. Again, my name is John Paris. I'm the chair of the Asian American Groups Endorsement Committee. On behalf of myself, our president Mike Vaswani, and our executive vice president Kevin, as well as the other board members we have present today, we appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy campaign schedule to come join us this afternoon. For those watching at a later date, this is the race for Clark County Commission District A. On the right-hand side, we have Steve Sisolak, the Democratic candidate and the incumbent. On the left, we have Michael Thomas, who is the Republican candidate. And again, this is for the same seat, which is Clark County Commission District A. The first question that we're asking in all of our races is this, and we'll start with Steve, and then obviously Mike do you prefer Mike or Michael? I'm sorry.
Mike is fine.
We'll give Mike an opportunity to answer. Steve, why have you decided to run for this particular race at this particular time?
I think that it's important to me to continue what I've worked for and started the first 8 years of my tenure on the county commission. It's 3 terms is the maximum you can serve. I think that the county has come a long way in the last 8 years in terms of our fiscal responsibility, in terms of addressing community needs, and we have a plan moving forward. I'd like to continue working on that plan as long as I possibly can.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, same question?
Same question.
For over a decade, the Clark County Commission has been all Democrats. Mr. Sisolak, as he said, has been the incumbent for the last 2 terms. He's running for a 3rd term, which I personally, hearing from the political pundits, I don't think he'd even complete. I think that within 2 years, he's probably going to run, throw his hat in for governor. And it always kind of makes me wonder when somebody has $2 million approximately in their war chest for a position that pays over $70,000 a year, kind of raises some red flags for me. I decided to run. I waited till almost the last minute to sign and run, because I don't think anybody should run unopposed. I think that, as I said, being all Democrats, it's not reflective of our community. I think that there were Republicans and Democrats, and I think one-party rule is never a good thing.
And Mike, well, assuming you're elected to the Clark County Commission, what do you think is the biggest challenge that the county would currently face, and how would you address it?
I think fiscal responsibility is something that we need in this county. I've watched the commission vote on many items. I think that they spend money freely. We have just committed to tentatively committed to $750 million for a stadium, but only the committee has met. I've heard no public hearings, but it's already been sent to the governor for a special session. One of the things that jumps right out at me is vendors, concessions. How's that going to work? There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to be made providing food and beverages for the stadium. I've heard nothing mentioned on that. And to commit Clark County to that is I think a big issue that needs to have public hearings. I commend Mr. Sisolak for public safety and wanting to do something about public safety with Metro and increase of officers. However, I think we need to take care of the outlying areas of Clark County as well. I've been to Laughlin several times, which is in Mr. Sisolak's district. They don't have a hospital. They don't have an ambulance service. They have one school that I was told, that I haven't toured yet, that's infested with rats. I mean, that's in Commission District A. And I think these things need to be addressed. Their property taxes are being used. They ought to get some of that back to them.
Steve, what do you think is the biggest challenge the county's facing right now?
Well, I'll try to address some of those. The biggest problem the county's facing right now is revenue. Property tax caps have caused a tremendous strain on communities. Every county in Nevada is dealing with property tax caps. What has happened is we've got 95, 98% of the homes are in abatement. And it's not the 3 and the 8% caps that's the problem, it's the rolling averages that are a problem. Last fiscal year, our assessment value, our taxes are going up by less than, I think it's 0.25%. I mean, it's a quarter of 1%. When you're in a community that's still growing and your revenue increase is only a quarter of a percent, it's virtually impossible to continue going. We're getting some new growth, but not enough to accomplish what needs to be done. So what we need to do is get a handle on hopefully the property tax caps, and we could count on the 3%, 8% raise. That's something you could budget for. As it relates to some of the other comments that were made, I did sit on the Governor's Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee, which recommended an expansion of the Convention and Visitors Authority and a remodel there. It recommended a new fuel line going to McCarran International Airport to secure fuel coming in. It recommended an extension of the monorail to Mandalay Bay to connect all 3 convention centers, the Sands, Mandalay Bay, and the LVCVA, which will definitely help our convention space. And it also recommends to the legislature an increase of 0.88 on the room tax. I feel very strongly that the community will benefit. UNLV, I was just listening to the football game on the way over here, and unfortunately they lost. But the community, if the Rebels ever want to get moved up into another conference, a Power 5 conference, they can't continue to play at Sam Boyd Silver Bowl. They recommended a $900 million stadium for UNLV a couple of years ago. That kind of fell flat. Went back to a $523 million stadium, and that couldn't get funded. So what we're able to do now is hopefully fund a stadium for both the university and the Raiders. The biggest thing that I'm a firm believer that room tax money should be used to put, as they say, heads in beds, attract people to this town, get them to stay here and spend their money. One of the big factors of both the expansion of the convention center and the university is the jobs. We're looking at about 18,000 construction jobs to complete a stadium alone, about 8,000 permanent jobs for the stadium, which would address what Mike is saying in terms of concessions. And we don't get into the minutia of who gets one contract, who gets another vendor contract. That'll be done through the stadium authority and the events company that'll be set up to deal with that. I can just tell you that in my 8 years of experience on the commission, the thing that affects me probably the most is when we talk about jobs, we just throw numbers out there. It's gonna create 1,000 or 50 or 5, or if we open a convenience store, it's a big thing across the street if we equate 6 jobs, because while the number might not be enormous, to those people that are gonna now get the job, it's a huge life changer. I know, well, I'll tell you one anecdotal story. When I voted to approve the Link project on Las Vegas Boulevard, the big wheel, I had a gentleman come up to me at his child's, I think it was a soccer game, softball game, and said for the first chance, he was a tile setter, and for the first chance in 18 months, he was gonna be able to go to work setting tile. And he was so ecstatic that he was gonna be able to bring home money. And he said, well, maybe now his kid can get, pay their tuition or their dues for the next season and buy them a new pair of shoes. And as a parent, it's important to be able to provide for your kids. So as a government official, if we can assist in providing jobs, I think that's the most beneficial thing we could do.
Steve, obviously the NFL stadium, or the tax initiative for it, has been big news in the last few days. There are opponents who say that the public should not be throwing money at a billion-dollar operation, subsidizing these multi-millionaires and a multi-billion-dollar NFL conglomerate. Why are we paying them any money? What ideas do you have to try and counter those arguments for the people that say that publicly funded stadiums, for lack of a better term, don't do anything for the public?
Right, and that's a question that we've been dealing with for a year now as it relates to the stadium, what the benefits are. The financing of the stadium is technically a 3-legged stool. You've got the NFL committing to $500 million worth of financing, which will come from Mr. Davis, from preferred seat licenses, and from a loan from the NFL. You've got the public side, which they asked for a $750 million commitment that would be financed by 0.88% on the room tax, which for our average room is going to be about $1.25, $1.35 in additional room tax. And then you've got what's left for the developer. The public gets an enormous benefit out of the stadium. The first one I'd mentioned is that UNLV would play in the stadium. They hope to have 46 events there. They're gonna try to attract international soccer. They're gonna use it for rugby. They're gonna use it for different events that would be played in the stadium. The original discussion was to put a TIF around the stadium, which is a tax increment financing, which would generate revenue to help service those debts. We decided against doing that and instead funded it with the 0.88 on the room tax. What the public will benefit without a TIF on there, the additional, what I mean by that is the additional revenue that'll come in sales tax, employee tax for people that are directly related to the stadium that we would otherwise not have achieved had the stadium not been there. It's called the Delta there. Is estimated to be over $35 million a year. That money can go for education, it can go for healthcare, it can go for social service, it can go for all the needs that are in the state. We would not have that without the ability to leverage this financing that's coming from the room tax. I think that's a benefit. The stadium is gonna be owned by the people of Clark County, people in Southern Nevada. We are not giving a billionaire $750 million. He's not gonna own it. He's gonna have to buy the land, donate the land to the stadium authority, make a contribution to the financing. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, the people own the stadium. Yes, he will have an operation contract on the stadium, and I hope he makes a lot of money on it, because if he makes a lot of money, he's gonna create a lot of jobs. And that's what I try to do.
Mike, what are your feelings on public money for an NFL stadium?
Well, I don't disagree that if it's gonna create 18,000 jobs, those people are gonna pay taxes, and that tax is gonna go to the county and to the state. Again, I take issue with the fact that there's no profit sharing of the stadium. So that goes to licensing, revenues, again, beverage sales, food, vendors. And if the vendors are chosen the way they were at McCarran, I think there's gonna be all kinds of little side venues and contracts awarded, and I think those that have political end will probably be chosen first, like they were at the D gates at McCarran. I don't think that public money should be committed without some type of guarantees. I mean, these are bonds. If we have a downturn, I think there's gonna be a problem that the public may be on the hook. Getting back to one thing that Mr. Sisolak said is about property tax and caps on the property tax. Right now, the legislature says your property tax cannot go up more than 3% a year. Well, speaking personally, my property tax and everybody else's in Clark County goes up every year. People don't buy homes to break even. We did have a downturn a few years ago. We were in a recession, and now that we've bounced back, we want people to go out and be able to afford housing. Real estate in Nevada is great, construction is great, but if people are gonna be spending thousands of dollars in increases each year for their property tax, then people are gonna rent rather than buy, and I think that might be a problem. So that's why there is a cap. And again, you don't reward people for buying, you don't punish people for buying homes. You work through that. That's something that people, that's their dream, that's the American dream. You wanna go out and own a home.
Now, Mike, as both of you have said, jobs are really the driving factor for our economy, and we really want to encourage more job growth and diversification here in Clark County. We had Tesla up north, Faraday down here. What ideas do you have to try and capitalize on that, whatever residual momentum there may be, to try and get more companies and more investment here in Clark County?
Well, one of the things that's on the ballot in November is, I believe it's question 8. It's going to be to break up the monopolies. I know that several of the hotels on the Strip, they've gone to they're self-sufficient for water reclamation, for electricity, and I think that we need to attract those jobs back to Southern Nevada. All these businesses left with rooftop solar. They left because the commission said, no, we're not gonna have rooftop solar, and the public utilities agreed. That's turned around, and they're gonna try to grandfather in those that had previously been purchased. But the issue remains, those were jobs that left Southern Nevada. Senator Harry Reid has the biggest solar farm in Nevada, and it seems to work well for him. I don't know why residents of Clark County can't have the same. And I think that would be self-generating, that would create jobs. And so that would be one of the things that we could do. And I would encourage alternate energy sources, and that would create jobs too in Nevada. One thing we do have an overabundance of, no argument, is the sun.
And Steve, what ideas do you have to try and encourage job growth, other than obviously ones we already touched on?
Okay, other than what we've touched on, I'll touch on solar first, and then I'll come up with a few others that we're looking at. The county commission has never taken votes on solar. We don't deal with solar. That's a state issue, it's a federal issue as it relates to solar. The PUC has determined that these folks are now grandfathered in, as the Supreme Court ruling that came out this week. Solar can be very beneficial, but there's a problem with solar. You have to have an exit fee, or you have to have something, because until we come up with an ability to battery solar, to capture the solar when you're getting extra of it, be able to use it when the sun goes down, you still have to people attached to the grid to provide them with that energy. And for NV Energy to do it and not recoup the revenue from that, it's everybody else is gonna have to pay for the people that are getting solar. So those are things that hopefully can be worked out as we work through more technology. Quite frankly, I think that the next generation, there's some young man or woman in 3rd or 4th grade right now that's gonna figure out a way to collect this solar energy that's generated off the solar panels. We have a lot of solar farms towards the east, down towards Boulder City that Mike's talking about. We've got some turbine that's looking in Searchlight and down in Laughlin. The problem with solar is it doesn't produce a whole lot of revenue. It does create some construction jobs, which is true, and that's helpful on the construction side, but there's no permanent jobs associated with solar except for minor maintenance and cleaning. You're talking literally a handful, 3, 4, 5 jobs for a solar facility that has to be done. I think what the better, and that's a good thing to use in terms of moving forward, it's good for construction. I think it will be advanced and it'll become more profitable and more beneficial to the entire community. I think the thing that we need to focus on more, I can tell you, I've been dealing with the commercial developers in Clark County, and a lot of the District A is part of the borders I-15 going down to California. We are ideally located for distribution and shipping. The land and the distribution in LA, the Southern California area is extremely expensive. Their land prices have far surpassed ours. Our tax climate is better than California. And I think we need to focus, we don't have enough really large distribution centers. And the problem you get with really large distribution centers is the same you get with big box stores. If the people you put in there move out, it's tough to release them. They're oftentimes build a suit, then they don't work for somebody else. But I think with the I-11 coming in and hopefully more capacity going to Southern California, we need to increase our distribution facilities along that I-15 corridor and also in North Las Vegas. We've got Apex to bring in some new energies in business like Hyperloop and that sort of thing. Everybody wants high-tech technology stuff. Switch is huge. We all want that. But unfortunately, that turns into a bidding war. What state is going to give the most in order to lure the company? I believe that if we started and said, Rob Roy is a great guy, he's been very loyal to the state of Nevada in terms of creating jobs. We need to do more to, at the university level, invest in some of these startup companies, so hopefully when they get bigger, we'll be able to capture that. Northern Nevada's done a little better job. They got Amazon as a distribution center. I mean, that's huge. That creates an enormous amount of jobs. I'd like to attract a little more of that.
I apologize to the panel. I've been asking most of the questions. I don't know if Mike, Kim, and Dennis, anyone wants to jump in for county-related issues?
You guys have been great.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Well, there's a lot of work ahead. Now, we're, at the Asian Culture Center, we really advocate the education part of it. And throughout the years that we've found out, the problem that we have right now with school, it originated from the grade schools. So we hope our commissioners and, whichever position that support our education part of it, which that we will be advocating for the children to have some kind of moral and ethical value education. I think that's really, really, there is none in the grade school. So that creates a problem when it comes to junior high and high school and so on. Etiquette, that's one of the biggest problems for the teachers. So we will need all of our public officials' help to all move forward on this education issue. It's not very simple, but you guys are advocating all the time, talking to people. So it will be released pretty soon, and we will need your opinion, you know, that, hey, if we teach our kids with these simple guidelines, would that be good for all of our children? So we'll need feedback on that. Thank you.
Do you want me to go first, or is it my turn or Mike's?
I honestly,
Do you know?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
Let me just
Go
answer the last
ahead.
question.
sure.
I think that, having worked for the Clark County School District for a number of years, I totally agree with you. I think that it's, not only is it cultural, but I think that there's, language barrier issues. And, I know that in the Asian community, they're very family oriented. Las Vegas in general, Clark County is a transitory town, a lot of disjointed families, one single parent households. And, the Asian community, the Asian students are very hardworking, and almost to the point where they actually tutor other students, and that's because they are so hardworking. I think that the Asian community itself needs to have advocates, and I don't think that that is something that's available now. I know from my personal experience, it seems like every time there's an issue, from the simplest task of buying a home to opening and operating a business, they have to go out and get a lawyer. I think that what we need to have is we need to have advocates inside Clark County for the commission, that if someone has questions of those issues, I know they do in the Hispanic community, that if somebody comes up and they need help filling out forms, and those forms in other languages, then they have that assistance. I'd like to see somebody, or a group of people permanently assigned to do that sort of thing. The community that I live in has 552 homes. Very large Asian community, Pacific Islander community, and we weren't getting the turnouts. I sit on the board, the HOA board, and we weren't getting the turnout, and we came to realize that it's a language barrier. So now when we put out mailers, when we put out the newsletter, we put it out in various languages, and it's increased our turnout, and you've got to get the community involved. You have to have them show up to affect any change. So just like you said, when it comes to education, you got to get the parents involved in their students' lives, regardless of race, nationality, or socioeconomic background. So I wholeheartedly agree. I think that moving forward, whether it's Steve or I, parental involvement is tantamount, and we have to work hand in hand with the school district.
The school district, unfortunately, a lot of it doesn't fall under the county commission. There's a school board that's elected. First time I got to meet Mike, each of the commissioners had a town hall meeting. We're obligated by state law to take input on this deconsolidation, which was very interesting, and I learned a lot about the school district going through that. I can tell that they're fighting deconsolidation, a lot of the board members are, because I don't think they want to give up control. When I was a kid growing up, and I'm going back a few years, I can tell you think the internet's fast. My mother knew what I did wrong before I got home from school. Now, and you didn't dare, because the first thing she'd say is, when your father gets home, and then you knew you were in trouble. The school district has just gotten, I think it's too large and unwieldy. I mean, I can deal with individual situations. I've got one now. I spent 4 or 5 phone calls this past week with Superintendent Skorkowski. I've got an individual, a young man in Henderson, who has severe autism. He's diagnosed with. He's been going to the same elementary school for 3 years. And the teachers developed a relationship with the student that she can talk to him. He's no longer self-violent. He started to communicate on an iPad, but just beginning. And the school district, in their infinite wisdom, because some child that lives 0.2 of a mile closer to the school than this young man does, he gets sent to another school. Well, he doesn't know anybody at the new school. The teacher doesn't know him. He has now become self-violent. The mother is in tears. She's afraid every day her son's gonna come home hurt. They're gonna be called from a high school or from a hospital asking what's going on. I said to Pat, I go, Pat, this is ridiculous. I mean, what's going on here? He says, well, we have to follow the rules, and the rules say, I go, well, then your rules are wrong. You gotta change the rules. You gotta let parents get involved. This shouldn't be about ego, about teachers' unions and about principals' unions and administration and who's pulling it. This should be about the kids, what we get down to. It should be about what's in the best interest of these students. And I think who knows what's in the best interest of the students is the parents of those students. what Mike says, parents need to get involved. Unfortunately, you know, when I grew up, my mom stayed home and my dad worked, and then my mom worked at night when my dad was home with us, so we always had somebody at home. A lot of these kids come from single-parent families, and they have a difficult time. They're not doing their homework. They think that they can drop a child off at school and pick them up at the end of the semester and they're educated. It doesn't work like that. You've got to get involved, and we need to stress more parental involvement, and I think the deconsolidation will do that. We'll move it back into the local schools and let parents, some schools, unfortunately, this is how it's gonna work, are gonna really excel. The ones where the parents are involved, and the ones where the parents aren't interested are gonna really suffer. But that's, to me, gonna show that it works, and then they'll be able to move the kids along. I also think the advent of more charter schools is gonna help considerably. I think kids are gonna have more options, parents are gonna have more options in terms of where to send the kids. And we've got a big thing we're dealing with now is grandparents are raising kids. It's not necessarily the parents. We've got grandparents becoming caregivers. So we need to get the whole community, and the school used to be a community activity, you know, and I know you can't do like we used to do where the moms would make cupcakes and send them to school on the kids' birthdays, and all kinds of rules against that stuff now. But you can sure have more parental involvement. So when you have the social studies fair or the science fair where the kids make a project, parents need to go to that. And the grandparents, we need to get the community involved to make it a neighborhood meeting type place, and there should be more neighborhood schools. Just like we used to be able to go play basketball on the playground at the school. Now they fence the school off, they chain link the gates, so kids can't get in, and you wonder why kids get in trouble. I mean, I understand there's liability if a kid falls down and scrapes his knee or hurts his leg, but let's work through that. Let's make the school a place where kids gather and they're safe. So I'd advocate more of that, working with the school district, but I think we're gonna see that with the deconsolidation, at least I hope so.
I have some issues with deconsolidation, and I think I voiced those when I first met Steve at Sierra Vista High School. It's not going to be a true deconsolidation. We still have one superintendent, we have regional superintendents, we have area superintendents, so there's nothing to trim what I call the fat off the top. All they're gonna do is they're gonna allocate more responsibility, more funds to the principal at a local level. So it's not gonna be a true deconsolidation in that sense. Some of the policies that the school district currently has, I take issue with. I worked for the police department for the school district for a number of years, and the school district is second only to Metro in recovery of guns, knives, and dangerous weapons from schools. General public is not aware of that because they don't want people knowing that generally certain schools in certain areas are unsafe. Parents have to weigh sending their child to a charter school or a magnet school, I guess, not a charter school, a magnet school, as opposed to the neighborhood that it's in. If you look at some of the magnet schools, they're probably not in some of the nicest areas, certainly areas that I wouldn't want my child catching a late bus or leaving the school after the sun goes down. There's a policy of the school district that if you have a child who has special needs and that child has been identified as having special needs and has violent tendencies or whatnot, they cannot be put out for more than 11 days a year. The school will take 20, 30 students out of a classroom, move them out into the hallway while a child has a tantrum and destroys that classroom. And I've seen that firsthand, either going on calls or I'd go to my daughter's school and I'd go, what's going on? Oh, Stephanie's in there knocking everything over in the classroom. So what's the teacher doing? Well, we're out in the hall studying because they can't do anything to Stephanie, so we just have to wait for her to calm down. And I said, that's ridiculous. My child's being deprived of a proper education because one child has been identified as having an issue. If a student brings a gun to school, caught with a gun, uses a gun, brandishes a gun at a high school, that child is removed from that high school immediately, sent to an opportunity school for a number of weeks, maybe 6 to 16 weeks. When that child returns to school after doing their time, the Clark County School District takes out a map, opens up the map and says, pick a school anywhere you want. You can go to any high school you want. We will provide you with transportation if you need it, and you can go to that school. That happened to a child, a young man from Western High School. He was caught with a gun on more than one occasion at Western High School. They sent him up to Palo Verde High School. That student went to Palo Verde High School. Now he was he went from being a small fish in a pond to being a big fish in a pond. And he went to Palo Verde High School. Rather than go to school for the day, he left, and he ended up shooting a student, Chris Privet, up at Palo Verde High School. That's why the schools in Summerlin, they get burglarized during the day, during school hours, because we're providing them a way to get up to that school, and they're seeing students with Michael Jordan shoes and iPads and iPhones, and they're going, I like that, I think I want that, and they take that. And the school district is providing them a means to do that. That needs to be looked at. And I think the Clark County Commission does have a say. They sit on 66 committees, public committees and utilities, and they are on the Fiscal Affairs Committee for the Clark County School District. They can control the purse strings. They can apply pressure. That's why Steve can pick up the phone and call Pat Skorkowski and ask him about the job he's doing and talk to him about particular instances, because they do have that limited control, and I think they should exercise that control.
Well, we are coming up on our time limit here, so we'll start with Mike and then go to Steve with the last word. Mike, why do you feel you are the better candidate for Clark County Commission District A?
I don't know that I'm the better candidate. I'm new to politics. As I said, Mr. Sisolak has already served 2 terms. He's seeking a 3rd term, and I would hope that he would fulfill that obligation and not leave in 2018 to run for governor, because then the public's not going to have a say on who to vote for the commission. The seat would be appointed. I'm true to my word. I say what I mean. I've got a long history of that. I've been in public service, in law enforcement for 25 years. I bring with that, I think, integrity, and I'm not looking to use this position as a stepping stone for further political interests. I'm going to be 56 years old this year, and I'm medically retired from the police department. I had to have my left foot rebuilt after a fight, and they do happen. This was 200 to 300 students in the middle of the street at Lake Mead in Rock Springs, blacks and Hispanics, and a boy got his head split open, and I ran into the crowd and carried him out, and his cousins thought that I was arresting him, and they jumped on me from the back while I was holding him, and I had to have my left foot rebuilt. So now I have cadaver bone, 3 brackets, and 9 screws in my foot, and I'm just grateful I don't walk with a limp, because I had to learn to re-walk. So part of that is I want to continue in public service. I don't know that I can continue in law enforcement. There's going to be a hearing on that in November. But I think I have the experience. I've been on both sides of the bargaining table, having been the union president of the Police Officers Association for the school district. So I tell people I'm Republican, and then they're shocked, because I tell them in the same breath I'm pro-union, and they go, well, wait, how can you be pro-union and be a Republican? And I say, well, you know, because I've sat on both sides of the bargaining table. I know what it's like. I know what, I know what people want, what people need, and what is reasonable from the management side as well as the union side. And that's something that I think I could bring to the table for the commission.
Steve.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, first off, of being here. I appreciate you taking the time. There's obviously a lot of other things you can do, and I appreciate the Alliance coming together and representing the community. And I agree with what Mike had said earlier. We need a stronger advocacy for the Asian American community. For those of you who met my girlfriend, she's Chinese and the love of my life, and been a great influence on me in terms of understanding. But I care deeply about this community. I mean, there's a lot of other things I could be doing. I've had a lot of other opportunities, but Las Vegas has been good to me. It's been very good to me. I'm a single dad. I raised 2 daughters, and they're the most important thing that I have in my life. I know what it's like to struggle in terms of being a single parent. I was capable of doing it was a little easier for me than some folks, but I recognize what single parents are facing. Las Vegas is at a time where we have to make some tough decisions moving forward. There's just an enormous demand on services. At the same time, services cost money, and you have to try to balance those two. I don't think anyone will say, and Mike's right, I can pick up the phone and I can call the superintendent, I can call the governor, I can call Dean Heller or Joe Heck, and I know all these folks. And they'll tell you that I make a lot of phone calls, and I ask for a lot, and I push a lot, because it's not in my best interest, it's in the community's best interest. And I'm a strong advocate for this community. I commend anybody that gets involved in the public process, because what Mike is going through a campaign, it's not easy. You put in a lot of time, it takes a lot of time away from your family, it takes a lot of time away from sometimes your job or other things you could keep doing. And people hopefully do it for the right reason, because they want to serve the community. I started serving community, I spent 10 years on the Board of Regents because I believed in education. I'd run for the state senate before that and lost, because I thought I could help at the state level, and then that didn't work out, and then ultimately I ended up at the county commission. I think the county's come a long way. We're not done. I think that we need to keep getting good people involved in local government, in any political position, people that are there for the right reason, I'm not big into going to ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. I'm more there in terms of trying to deal with the toughest problems. And one of the big issues, one question I get from people, what's the biggest issue you're facing? Well, the biggest issue I'm facing is one that you just called me about, whether it's about if your neighbors, and I'm telling you, we need everything from your neighbor's branches are hanging over the tree of your wall and putting the leaves in your pool, or there's a pothole out in front of your house and you gotta go, to you, that's the biggest issue that I deal with. If somebody else has got an issue that the reflectors on the strip, on the medians are coming off, and some kid ripped them off, and can we replace reflectors? Whatever issue you got is your biggest issue. And to try to solve those problems, sometimes they're not county problems. I've got people that are asking about veterans, VA benefits from the military. And I can't do anything, but I can sure make a call to Dean Hill or Joe Heck or Dina Tice and say, hey, look, can you help me out? I got somebody that needs some help here. And we all try to work together in that way. So I have the absolute best staff in Clark County. I've got 3 gals that work for me, that I'm the only commissioner that, through the blessings of God, I've had the same 3 ladies for 8 years now. I mean, we work as a team, and they handle every problem we get, and they know a lot of this stuff better than I do. So I'm very fortunate, and I just want to be able to have the opportunity to continue.
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry I'm being attacked by Dennis and I are being attacked by a bug right now.
A bug.
An actual bug.
Actual bug, okay.
We appreciate, again, thank you to both of you for taking time out of your schedule.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Just so you know, we will be, since you're the only 2 individuals in this particular race,